Then the Mavericks facing Luka Doncic and the Los Angeles Lakers last night provide you closure on the entirety of the trade. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next on the DLLS Mavs Podcast. Here we go. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella. We are DLLS Mavs, your favorite guys covering your favorite team every single day. Appreciate you joining us here on DLLS Sports. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel while you're here, and do the same for our podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Did the Mavericks facing Luka Doncic and the Lakers last night provide you closure on the trade? Plus, as we turn the page and look forward for the next chapter of the Mavs, what is to come for this team in the final 23 games of the season? We'll get into all that and more on today's show on this wonderful Wednesday, balmy Wednesday here in the DFW area as we get ready to turn the calendar from February to March. The Mavericks, of course, lost last night to the Lakers, off today before they come home to play 5 of their next 6 games at the American Airlines Center starting tomorrow evening with the Charlotte Hornets, Bobby. But as we jump into our show today, how are you? How are we feeling on this wonderful Wednesday?
Oh my God, it is bright and sunny outside. The weather is great. It's just a great day to be alive, man. It feels like spring is about to spring.
Finally, because for a while there, the temperatures were frigid around here, but in the 70s today and looking rather nice outside. Unfortunately, it wasn't looking that nice inside of Crypto.com Arena for the Lakers, or excuse me, for the Mavericks last night.
Oh, really? For the Lakers, too?
No, it's very true in a lot of ways. As the Mavericks fell 107 to 99, Luka Doncic is getting his 81st career triple-double, scoring or assisting on 51 of the 107 points for Los Angeles. Kyrie Irving did have 35 points in the losing effort, but LeBron James was too much in the fourth quarter, scoring 16 of his 27 in that final period, which gets us to our first topic of today's show. Did last night's game, Bobby, provide you closure when it comes to the Luka Doncic trade now that the Mavericks have seen their former superstar on the other side on the same floor with them?
That's a really tough question, right? Because on the one hand, yes. On the one hand, no. I think my ultimate answer, though, is it's kind of like if you have experienced a breakup and then you like reconnect with your ex a couple months later and have like a cup of coffee or something and talk about it, and you're not really talking about it with the intention of trying to sort it out and get back together.
Mm-hmm.
You're also not really trying to talk about it to make each other feel better or to make yourself feel better. And then you just walk away being like, man, I don't know. I'm just kind of glad that part is over. Like, I'm just kind of, so I don't know if it's closure necessarily. I think the term in our thumbnail on today's stream, turning the page, I think is more apt. I don't necessarily think that the story is over and that all the emotions and the scars and all that stuff are, healed. But they're definitely papered over, and I'm ready for whatever's next.
Sure.
I am ready for the next thing. Even though, I'm still not exactly pleased with how the Mavs went about the trade and everything, but it is, it's over now.
To quote Kyrie Irving, it was awkward as blank. Last night, seeing those two straight on the same floor together on opposite sides. Luka Doncic speaking after the game last night on whether or not the game facing his former teammates provided closure for him as he moves forward with his career with the Lakers. Here's what Luka had to say.
I mean, the closure is going to take a while, I think. It just it's not ideal. But, like I said, I'm glad this game is over. It was a lot of emotions. But we go little by little, and every day is better.
A little bit better each day for Luka Doncic, and it's going to be a while for him to get to that closure. And again, as you mentioned, this game we'll see these two teams in a game again on April the 9th here in Dallas, where a lot of those feelings, I'm sure, will be reopened once again as Luka Doncic will be on the AAC floor for the first time as an opponent of the Dallas Mavericks. But for me, watching the game last night, there was a lot of conflicted feelings going into the game. For me yesterday, knowing how the trade and what we've come to learn about how the organization has felt about Doncic on the way out the door and the team that he was traded to, and then seeing him start to come and look like himself, whether it was against the Denver Nuggets or even in certain ways against the Dallas Mavericks last night. This is just the tip of the iceberg for what we think will be a long runway for Doncic and the Lakers. And every time he does something that's positive or something that we think could have been done in a Mavericks uniform, there'll be a little bit of a jab every time he does something, because it's like, man, he could have been still doing this for the Mavericks. But at the same time, as Jason Kidd talked about it pregame, everything continues to move forward. And for the Mavericks, they will have to continue to move forward to try to find a way in these next 23 games to get themselves into the top 6 of the West while still dealing with the injuries that they're dealing with their big men situation as well. Kyrie Irving also speaking last night after the game about his feelings and emotions facing Luka Doncic on the other side, seeing his brother in a Laker uniform and how he was able to deal with the emotions of playing in last night's game. Here's what Kyrie Irving had to say.
We had a lot of fun, bro. We went to Madrid. We started preseason in Abu Dhabi, which helped us out a lot, man. When you're on the road and you get to know someone and their family and you're introducing everybody to your friends, and, Madrid was like very special because that's where he played, and I got a chance to meet some of his friends and his support system out there, and I think that just carried over into the season. And, he was in just great spirits, coming into the last season, and it was easy to, compliment him while he's having an MVP season, MVP caliber season. I feel like he, if not deserved MVP, he finished second, but at the same time, he carried us a lot of the way where, I was injured or hurt. And, he carried the brunt of responsibility. So I think for me, it was respect there before we played together. But then playing with him, he's just, innocent kid at the same time, just ultra talented. Whole world's in front of him. You want to protect people like that, too, because I feel like sometimes people come at him crazy, which is unnecessary, and he responds in his own way. But he's not from America. He's not used to the degenerative culture here, at times, especially when the narrative starts spinning. So my goal was just to protect him, man. And that's why it goes deeper than basketball. Been out a few times where just our families have connected, and, this is one of those lifetime things for me. I think he feels the same way. If he doesn't, I'll put him in a headlock.
So Kyrie Irving speaking to the brotherhood that he has developed with Luka Doncic over the course of the time that they were teammates together. And I think Kyrie has done a great job of keeping it to not just the basketball side of things, but also off the floor as well, and what that meant for him and his relationship here. And Bobby, you could hear it in his comments there, reflective on the time that he had with Luka, but also at the same time understanding that it is a business and these things happen from the time to time. You just didn't think it would happen necessarily to this player. But Kyrie Irving, I think, having a really good perspective on how all this is transpiring and how he's keeping it not just focused on the basketball, but the relationships with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around the league for a long time and has had a lot of former teammates,
yes,
and has been in on a lot of really good teams. He's won a championship. He's played for 4 different franchises, I think, now, and with some of the best players of our lifetime, guys like LeBron, KD, James Harden,
sure,
and now Luka, and so he's used to developing these relationships with these fellow, because Kyrie also is himself a global icon. These fellow kind of larger than life figures, and the way that he put it is I thought really apt, where he's saying like people come at you crazy, and there's just a lot, and Kyrie, in his own way, was kind of like that once upon a time. I mean, this is the number 1 pick in the draft that at however old he was when LeBron went back to Cleveland, 21 or 22, thought he was going to be kind of the new guy in Cleveland, and now LeBron comes back, and so he's got to kind of be this sort of complimentary thing, and he's trying to establish his own identity, but it's really all about LeBron, and then all of a sudden you're in the finals, and you beat one of the best teams ever, and then things get really weird, and the next thing you know, you're out of town. So like he's used to he was in that situation, very young, very talented, very famous, very influential, with the whole world in front of him, the whole world ahead of him, and then things kind of got weird for a little while. Whether that's Boston media will tell you it's all Kyrie's fault. I'm sure it wasn't, but that's the thing. But yeah, I mean, I think Kyrie's relationship with Luka is Kyrie's relationship with Luka. All of those guys actually know him. I think a lot of fans don't know Luka. I don't really. I've talked to Luka 100 times. I don't know Luka. And so it's for us even, and certainly for fans that don't cover the team and don't go to games as a representative of the media or whatever, like, you don't formulate real life relationships with these people, but what you do is develop a very powerful parasocial connection to them.
Sure.
You look up to them. They create and spark emotion within you. I thought Colin Cable yesterday for D Magazine, Colin's written a couple bangers about Luka over the years that have been really, really good and powerful stuff, but he wrote about kind of the fans' experience and the different types of feelings that fans have going into that game. And he said a third group, so there's 4 groups, but a third group have sought fertile ground in between people still up to root for and watch the Mavs, but will continue to follow Luka's career with great interest and affection. That's the healthiest emotional response, therefore the hardest to produce. I agree. I think that is the healthiest emotional response. You're fans of the team. Maybe you're from Dallas. Maybe you've been a Mavs fan all your life or whatever. You love Luka. He's gone now. You still love Luka. You still love the Mavs.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very hard thing to do. But, you know, whenever you do spend so much time rooting for and, you know, looking up to, and sometimes in some cases almost like worshiping Luka or naming your children or your pets after Luka.
There's a lot of various investments that have been made in the player.
Yeah, financial too,
Yes.
and emotional, and all the, like, it is hard to just move on just like that. You know, it's a business for the players. Kyrie will tell you that, but it's more than just a business for the fans. So it is a little more difficult, I think, in some ways, for people that don't know Luka to move on than it is for the people that do know him.
Yeah.
You know? It's like the closer you get, it feels like it's easier to let go, which is not how it normally works in life.
That's true. And I think Ronald has, you know, kind of a great question to kind of, you know, crystallize some of those things in terms of the comment that he has. He says, how can last night's game provide closure when there's more BS headlines being put out there about Luka from the Mavs front office the next day? And I think for a lot of fans who continue to see, whether it be the same things repeated in different words, the conversations around Luka and the way that he is being portrayed on his way out the door has left a lot of fans, I think, disillusioned about what this franchise is and what they will be going forward. And I think that's tough when you're trying to compartmentalize the feelings that you have about the player, but also trying to still remain a fan of the team, because if you're going to try and still follow the player and be a fan of his while also being a fan of the team, you're looking at the team right now with a lot of side-eye and thinking, is this an organization I could trust moving forward to do the right thing, to be in a position to allow me to remain as a fan of the team, given the way that they handled the superstar on the way out the door? And I think that's another part of the conflicting feelings that a lot of people have about not just Luka himself, but also the organization, in trying to move forward with them, knowing that they may feel like the decision that was made was not in the best interest of the team, but still trying to be a fan of the Mavericks going forward.
Part of that is just how media works, though. I mean, obviously this game being so close to when the trade actually happened, like it's just a couple weeks, you know, makes it feel like it's just a constant bombardment. But whenever Luka played against the Mavs again, obviously there was going to be stories. And, you know, unfortunately, the things that the organization or that people within the organization said about him, they are going to be recycled. And the things that they said were so kind of gross that, like, it's just going to be gross recycling over and over again. But I mean, it's not like they're giving interviews constantly. A lot of it is just recycling the same sort of thing. Some of it was reported by our own guy, Tim Cato.
Yeah.
Some of it was reported by our other own guy, Mark Stein. You know, so you know, these are things that we as DLLS Mavs Podcast have known for 3 weeks now. You know, because they were some of the first people to report these thoughts. But yeah, I mean, part of that is just the way media works. So it's not like it's not going to be an everyday thing much longer. You know, I can promise you that.
As Mavericks fans still continue to wrestle with the fact that Luka Doncic is no longer in a Mavericks uniform, seeing him in a Lakers uniform last night, I'm sure it sparked feelings of what kind of multiverse are we living in, because it was definitely weird to see him on the other side. But for both teams, whether it be for the Lakers or the Mavericks, they've got to move forward, particularly obviously for the Mavericks in the final 23 games of this season, because they've got a lot to try to accomplish, even with the players that are available and or not available at this particular time.
It's good that they just got it out of the way. It's over now.
Yeah.
You know, let's turn the page and move forward.
At least this meeting is over with, because by the time we get to April 9th, a lot of these conversations will be refueled once again when Luka Doncic steps on the floor at the American Airlines Center, and obviously much different circumstances, but nonetheless, the first meeting between these two teams now behind us. Now the Mavericks can look forward to playing the rest of the regular season. Coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Speaking of what's next, now that the reunion is over with for the Mavericks, what is next for them to try and get themselves in position to make the postseason, and what that looks like in the form of Anthony Davis and others potentially returning, hopefully sooner than later. All that and more coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs podcast. But first, let me help you win some money when it comes to Sleeper, the best fantasy league platform out there, and allows you to put your ball knowledge to the test by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will have more or less than your projected stats each week. With Sleeper, the more picks you combine, the more you can win, all the way up to 100 times your money. They also keep you in the loops with instant alerts for breaking in news and major injuries as well, so you can stay ahead of the game and keep track of league updates in real time, so you're always ready and informed to outsmart your friends. If you picked Kyrie Irving to have more than 35 points last night, or at least 35 points, you were a winner last night when it came to Sleeper, unlike our guy over here. Yes,
it's not my fault. It's PJ Washington's fault, dude. He scored 0.
Yeah, he did. PJ didn't help him out.
0, PJ. Come on.
Last night. So if you think you have what it takes, new users can download the Sleeper app and use code DLLS Mavs to get $55 in free entries when you place a $5 contest. You can apply it to any contest as well. It doesn't have to be your first. Remember, terms and conditions apply. So Sleeper's terms of use for details currently operational in over 25 states. So check out Sleeper today.
KG, the internet tells me that it is sunny with a high of 77 degrees in Dallas today. It's spring. It's springtime, baby. That means the sun is back and the sun is shining, and there's no better way to get ready for the season ahead than by getting quality shades built to last from our friends at Shady Rays, where they've got you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. They've got more than 300,000 five-star reviews. These things are legit. I have my own pair. You'll even see me wear them in a minute. But they got hundreds of options to choose from, so if you don't like the one I got, you can get one that you like. They probably even have a style in your favorite team's colors. They also have the best eyewear protection in all of eyewear. If you lose them, if they get broken, if they get damaged, if they get stolen, Shady Rays will replace them right away. No questions asked. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
As we closed the chapter last night between the Mavericks and the Lakers, with Luka Doncic making his first appearance against the Mavericks as a member of the Lakers, what's the next chapter for the Dallas Mavericks? Plus, a little bit later on in our show, what's the one word to describe the Mavericks and where they are right now as they get ready for the final 23 games of the regular season? The Mavericks, with the loss last night, dropped to 31-28 after 59 games. We will be back on the floor. They will be back on the floor, I should say, tomorrow night when they take on the Charlotte Hornets to begin a stretch where they play 5 of their next 6 games at home. By the way, programming note, when it comes to the March 5th game between the Mavericks and Bobby's Milwaukee Bucks, that game will now be at 7 p.m. And not televised on ESPN. That game was originally going to be scheduled to be played at 8:30. That game will now be played at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, March the 5th. So just mark your calendar there if you're looking for a programming note. See you all in there as well. See Ardell in the chat. See also, I was about to say see Tanner, but Tanner's literally right there. He's literally right there. But shout out to Ben, William, and everyone else in our chat so far. But let's just jump into it. As we do turn the page from last night, what is the next chapter for the Dallas Mavericks? ESPN's Tim McMahon, as part of the NBA's Power Rankings for ESPN, detailing what could be next when it comes to the Mavericks and their big men, saying, quote, big men Anthony Davis and Dereck Lively II, who, of course, dealing with the adductor strain and the stress fracture in his ankle, joined the team on the California road trip and have progressed to getting in some work on the court. The Mavs' hope is that Davis and Lively will return in time for the tandem to get several games together at the end of the regular season, sources tell ESPN's Tim McMahon there. So a little bit of optimism if you're looking for some when it comes to the Mavericks big man situation, which gets us to that question. What is next then for this team after getting this behind them from last night?
You have to keep fighting and keep battling the way they did for most of the game last night. Obviously, the first few minutes of the game were really weird, and the last few minutes of the game sucked. But like the 40-ish, 35, 40 minutes in between were really, really good. You know, that's the Mavs team that we have kind of come to expect to see over the last few weeks. They're very undersized, and they're undermanned, and they're outgunned by most good teams, and the Lakers are a good team. But the Mavs are going to out-hustle you. They're going to outwork you. They're not going to back down. They're really confident in themselves. and they can take you down to the wire. They're going to have to keep doing that until the cavalry arrives. I think one of the guys will be back at some point. I don't know if all three will. I don't know if even two will, but I do feel confident just based on the law of averages, probability. We're going to see at least one of those guys before the end of the season. And if we see more, then we might be able to get irrationally confident, KG.
Well, look, I've been on record. You've heard me on this podcast. You've seen me say it on social media. If not, they definitely follow me in the week as well. I have been operating under the assumption, and I hope that I'm wrong, that we would not see any of the three main centers for the Dallas Mavericks for the rest of the regular season. There has been obviously hope that has progressed it to make me think that that is a possibility now. Obviously, the date that is coming up on March the 6th will be the date that we are marking our calendars for. That's what Jason Kidd said, that we will have the, quote, big evaluation when it comes to Anthony Davis, Dereck Lively II, and also Daniel Gafford as well, each of them dealing with significant injuries. And if you can get one or two of those guys back in time to be able to develop some rhythm and some chemistry in the final several games of the regular season, that will give this team an opportunity to have a little bit of a runway going into the postseason to give you some confidence that they can maybe make a run by the time that they get there. The question will be, how quickly can they develop that chemistry on the floor, given the moving parts that this team has been dealing with really throughout most of the regular season from an injury standpoint. You saw Dwight Powell come back last night. He provided some decent minutes at times against the Los Angeles Lakers, but you're going to need your healthy big men to be in there for consistent stretches to give Kyrie Irving the opportunity to take some of the load off, especially offensively in the form of an Anthony Davis. But most importantly, this team's identity is going to be leaned on the defensive end. And if you're not going to have Lively or Davis or Gafford, it really becomes difficult to establish that identity going forward when it comes to the defense of this team. That, to me, is my biggest thing. Can the identity of this team be established in time enough to give them the kind of confidence that they can lean on that going into the postseason?
Well, it is, though, isn't it? Like, at the risk of being inflammatory, and I'm not trying to say this to be inflammatory, but I think, and we've talked about this before,
mm-hmm.
A common complaint from Mavs fans really throughout much of the last 5 years, basically, since they've been good, 6 years, I guess, if you want to go back, is you didn't totally know on any given night if the Mavs are going to just come out and play hard and just bust their ass and fight for all the loose balls and give it their best shot. Whether it was a good team or a bad team, the Mavs were often accused of playing down to their competition. The Mavs were often accused of, especially during the Rick era, of not being able to close out games. They were blowing leads and they couldn't get key stops and they wouldn't win all the 50-50 balls and they wouldn't get their hands dirty and they kind of were taking it easy a lot of the time. And I don't think that Luka is solely responsible for that. I think there's plenty of players that, deserved and earned that criticism. But, since the trade, like it or not, since the trade, the team has been a scrappy bunch of
dogs.
Tryhards.
Yeah.
Dude. They're so sweaty. Like they are such tryhards. And if that is going to be the identity, then what happens whenever you add in size to a team that tries really hard
and that much more skill?
Yeah, there is some beauty in the struggle here, because it would be very easy. I mean, they are probably going to lose quite a few more games. They might win a lot too, but they're probably going to lose some more games due to not having any size until those guys comes back. But I don't think they're going to lose many or maybe even any games because they're not trying hard enough. And that at least is something that I feel like as a fan you can get behind, because the one thing in life that you can control, this is saying Mark Cuban used to, we had signs for this in our office. We would play it at the games whenever I was working for the team. The one thing in life you can control is effort. And the Mavs are fighting their ass off every night. And I respect that.
No, and I respect that too. And that's something that we've lauded on this show throughout the entirety of the season, is that this team, no matter who has been available or not, has played for the most part with the kind of energy and effort befitting of a team that you can get behind. And knowing that the margin of error is virtually none at this point, you've got to rely at least on having that every single night and then worrying about the execution on the backside of that. Because if you've got guys that are willing to go out there and try to execute the game plan to the best of their abilities, more times than not, they're going to hopefully put themselves in a position to do that on a consistent basis. Then when you start adding guys in with the kind of skill level of a Dereck Lively II, of an Anthony Davis, of a Daniel Gafford, you marry those two together, you feel like, along with Kyrie Irving being your leader on this team, that you can make that run. And even in the game that we saw that Anthony Davis playing those 2.5 quarters, he was dynamite even without the lack of chemistry in the initial that he had with his teammates. So just imagine that developing that much more with time together on the floor, how much better that could potentially be.
They just need the time.
They need that time. They need that time. And we'll hear from Kyrie Irving a little bit later on in terms of what that looks like for him, especially being the vocal on-floor and off-floor leader for this team. So, Bobby, are you telling me that the future is potentially bright for the Dallas Mavericks given this situation?
I think that after such an emotional last few weeks, we should just have some fun and hope cast.
Well,
I have visions.
Do you have visions?
Yes.
Well,
and in them I see the sun.
Well, if you're going to shade yourself a little bit, you can do it with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS for 35% off your polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades, rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
It's time to be hopeful. It's time to be wildly optimistic. It's time to get ridiculous. Okay? I believe, and we've said this, I'm not just doing a bit. I believe that if the Mavs are healthy, we talked about this 2 days ago, KG. I'm not afraid of any team in the West in a playoff series or even in a do or die, in a one-game scenario. I guess I would be a little worried about Steph Curry, and I would be worried about the officials in an OKC game. But I'm not really worried about any team in the West in a 7-game series. The Lakers beat the Mavs last night. Not sure they win that game if the Mavs have a 7-footer. Any of their three that are out. I'm not sure the Lakers win that game.
And if PJ scores a bucket.
I'm not sure. You can't convince me outside of the Warriors game that the Mavs couldn't have or might not even wouldn't have won any of the games they've lost since the trade deadline if they had a single big.
Yeah.
Including a game against Joel Embiid when they had Kessler Edwards on Joel Embiid. I think that if we're being hopeful here.
We are.
When they get healthy, the Mavs might be the best team in the Western Conference.
Ooh.
Might. I think OKC is that.
They're a juggernaut.
I can't completely compromise my integrity. OKC is the best team in the West. I'm not sure that the Mavs couldn't beat them in a series. I'm not sure. I'm not afraid of any team if they're healthy.
I'm not afraid.
This team fights hard. When they're healthy, this team has a lot of star power. When they're healthy, this team has a lot of experience. When they're healthy, this team has a lot of size. When they're healthy, this team has a lot of versatility. When they're healthy, this team has a lot of defense. When they're healthy, this team has a lot of FU in them.
Come take my
Even if they lost Luka, I think that AD, Kyrie, I think PJ that doesn't airball layups, I think Klay Thompson, I think Max effing Christie are ready to beat your ass. All we have to do is just if any of those guys come back. That's all we need, KG, is just one Band-Aid one time.
I think it'll mean a little more than a Band-Aid.
The future is so bright.
So bright.
As long as the future stops into year 2027.
Wow.
Anything after that is not, we're not talking about that. We're not talking about that.
Oh, man. Some of the comments coming in. Thanks. Preach, Bobby.
Damn right.
From Ardell.
That was a different guy with sunglasses on. What are we talking about? I just had a blackout episode.
You did. You went full Luka. Good job. Also, Charlie Saturday's in the chat. Shout out to him.
Shout out Charlie.
Shout out from Ben Selheim. Preach, Bobby. Great job. You feel better? I feel like that was cathartic for you. You feel a little bit better now?
Nah, it's just fun to be over the top.
Okay.
It's fun to be provocative.
Look at you. The future is bright, hopefully, for your Dallas Mavericks. Look, man.
Maybe.
That's right, Luke. We need a ray of hope, damn it. We need a ray of hope. And our guy, Bobby Corella, just provided that here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. When we
March 6th is the only day that matters for the rest of my life.
And for the Mavericks big men as well. Coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs podcast, we hear from Kyrie Irving. What's one word to describe the Mavericks where they are right now as they play the final 23 games of the regular season? All that and more coming up next on the DLLS Mavs podcast. Speaking of bright, you got to get yourself the Saturday Neon, started by two college friends. Saturday Neon makes officially licensed collegiate logo LED neon signs, perfect for your home, office, dorm, bar, or fan cave as well. You can check out their new Essentials collection, featuring almost 50 of the biggest schools across the country and counting for only $75. It includes Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State signs as well. Maybe they'll make one for Baylor for Tanner one day. Unlike traditional neon, these LED signs won't break or shatter, but still give you that classic uniform glow that you know and love. With the LED lasting up to 100,000 hours, you'll be enjoying your signs for a long time as well. They're the perfect gift for anyone that's a sports fan looking to deck out their bar or their man cave as well. So make sure you head over to SaturdayNeon.com. Use code DLLS for 10% off your favorite sign. Again, head over to SaturdayNeon.com. Use the code DLLS for 10% off your favorite sign with Saturday Neon.
As the weather gets better and as it warms up outside, hey, you're going to be spending more time outside. You're going to be going on hikes. You're going to be going to the lake. You're going to be floating down a river. You might just be sitting on the grass somewhere enjoying sunshine for once. You're going to want to keep your food and your drinks cool, folks. Rugged Road, they are dedicated to creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the very best. These coolers float in any conditions. They keep your stuff cool. They can keep it cool for up to 7 days. I'm a big sparkling water guy. You never see me anywhere without a can of bubbly in my hand. If I'm trying to keep that stuff cool, I need a Rugged Road cooler if I'm going to be outside all day in the hot Texas sun. And also, they're very lightweight. Unlike these other heavy-duty coolers, Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip without compromising on performance. So gear up for your next outdoor adventure with Rugged Road coolers. Reliable, durable, and built to be used, Rugged Road is your ultimate cooler companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use code DLLS for 10% off.
What's one word to describe the Mavericks as they get ready to play their final 23 games of the regular season? And a little bit later on in our show, in light of everything that has happened, how has it changed your view of basketball or the way that you fan? Our guy Bobby Carrillo wrote a terrific piece on alldlls.com that we will touch on a little bit later on in our show. Kyrie Irving speaking to the media last night, discussing hopefully the chemistry and opportunity to play with Anthony Davis and the big men once they get healthy, and what that could mean for them going forward. Kyrie Irving discussing that, and this is what he had to say last night after the game.
I mean, it's just a strong focus. This is still a deep focus here, and that's not going to change, especially as I'm getting prepared and as I'm talking to my teammates and the coaching staff is relaying things to me. Obviously we have injuries, and getting AD back would be tremendous. We want him to get fully healthy or as close to 100% as he can be. Like you said, we've seen glimpses of it, but I think the ramp-up period is going to be an adjustment period too. I don't think it would be as hard of an adjustment just because he's a big and he's agile. He's able to pass, shoot, dribble. He's able to play without the basketball. He's able to lead us defensively and get himself going. So we're just going to be leaning in on his IQ and leaning on his skill sets and allowing him to play in space and be the player he's been, and also raise it to another level now that he's playing with other players that can complement him in a different way, other than when he was playing at Lakers. So I'm excited about that, man. As a point guard, as one of the lead guards on the team, I'm excited to just throw it down to somebody, let them take the double team, and let me just play on the backside, you know what I mean? Or let me just play, 4-on-3 and make the decisions. But until that point comes, I'm just going to keep, ramping up what I'm doing.
And after last night's game, the Mavericks find themselves in ninth in the Western Conference at 31-28, tied in the loss column with the Sacramento Kings, who are 29-28. So with that being said, in the backdrop of Kyrie Irving discussing hopefully the opportunity to play with Anthony Davis sooner rather than later on a consistent basis, what's the one word you would use to describe the Dallas Mavericks and where they are right now?
On the positive side, I'll say opportunity.
Okay.
They have an opportunity. They're 31-28. Things have not gone according to plan, and yet they're still only one game out of 6th. They're also one game out of 7th and half a game out of 8th, and they're only one game ahead of 10th. So it's very, 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 very close. Okay. But The team that's in 11th, Phoenix, cannot win a single game right now for whatever reason. San Antonio was there, but Wemby's out for the year. Portland is starting to actually play pretty well, but they're 5.5 games behind you right now. So the Mavs have a really good opportunity to kind of try and stall for time for these guys to get back and still be in the play-in picture. They have a really good time to stall for time and still not be 9th or 10th. If you're 9th or 10th, you have to win 2 games just to become the 8th seed. If you lose one time, your season's over. If you're 7th or 8th, you win the first game, you're the 7th seed. If you lose that one, you still have one more chance at home to win the next game to be the 8th seed. So they have an opportunity, despite all of the stuff, despite all of the bad things that have happened, to finish 7th, 8th, or even 6th, which is really good. They also have an opportunity when these bigs come back to figure it out. They have an opportunity because, dude, I'm looking up and down the standings. I mean, OKC is great, but the Mavs, for whatever reason, are just their kryptonite, maybe. Memphis, I don't know. Denver, it feels like Denver is so imperfect. The Lakers, so imperfect. Houston is falling off lately. The Clippers, I'm not afraid of the Clippers, dude, or the Wolves necessarily. The Warriors are actually kind of scary right now, but you wouldn't have to play them till later on. Like, there's not a lot of teams in the West outside of OKC that are just looking like juggernauts hiding in plain sight, you know? So, like, they have an opportunity, if they get in the dance, to do some damage, despite, again, everything that's going on. And so I think from their vantage point, they have to maintain that confidence. They have to maintain that self-belief, and they have to maintain the level of effort, energy, and all that stuff, buy-in, dedication, in order to make it actually happen. Because, again, they don't have the size, and in most games, they don't have the athleticism or the skill to just outgun, outman, outskill, out-talent the other team. They're going to have to outwork them. And without the belief and the confidence and the faith and all that stuff, you're not going to be able to do it. So if they understand and accept that they have an opportunity and they accept that they must do what they have to do to take advantage of it, then I think that this could be it could end up having a happy-ish ending.
Some of the words that we're seeing in the chat right now from our guy Charlie Saturday, treacherous. Other words include surviving from Corbin, resilient from Ardell, uphill. Some of the words describing where the Mavericks are right now. The word I'll choose in this conversation, I'm going to go with incomplete. And I think the reason I go with that word is that we have been looking to see what this team will look like together as a whole, whether it be with the injuries that they're dealing with to their big men. Kyrie Irving has missed time as well. We know how things have changed dramatically in terms of the roster makeup of this team, but it's been really a big incomplete for this season. And hopefully going forward, we will get to see the team fully formed in what they look like to not only build on the defensive identity that Nico Harrison wants for this team, but Anthony Davis being at the center of that and the potential that they have to give teams a lot of problems. Because you're right. I mean, you look at the teams 2 through really 9, it's kind of a mess. I mean, you've got the Grizzlies and the Nuggets sitting there, both at 38 and 20. You've got the Lakers sitting there at 35 and 21, the Rockets at 36 and 22, and the Clippers have lost 3 straight. So there is, to Bobby's point, opportunity to be able to get yourself moving up in the standings. The question will be, how quickly can you do that, and how quickly can you get healthy in order to try and achieve those goals? So the word I'll use is incomplete, because, my gosh, I want to see what this team looks like fully healthy and together to give us a much more complete picture on what this team's potential will be going forward for the rest of the regular season. Because if they do get into the tournament in the postseason, they could do some real damage to teams, because their size is going to be a huge advantage for them with Lively, with Gafford, with Davis, and that will present a lot of problems to these teams who will not have the ability to match up with them in a lot of ways when it comes to the size of this Mavericks team.
If those guys get healthy.
If those guys get healthy.
And, you know, like Corbin says, and we've mentioned this before, but as Corbin says in the chat, how confident are we that this Mavs team doesn't suffer any more injuries? And we're not confident at all in that. I mean,
you could throw the word
ain't nobody safe right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm knocking on wood every time Kyrie falls down.
Exactly.
And, you know, I mean, PJ was, you know, pretty brutal last night, but we've made the case throughout the season that he's one of the most valuable players on the team. And whenever he's missed time, they've lost a lot of games. And so nervous about him. And Klay's 35. Like, there's so many guys. Dante Exum has been good since he's been back in the lineup, but he has a history of
It's
getting
true.
injured. So nobody's safe right now with the curse that's hanging over this team. But if they are healthy, then I think that they can do some damage. And who said it? I'm trying to find it. CM33 says what I was talking about before with the happy-ish ending. CM33 says no happy ending. Anything this team does is less than what they could have done. That might be true, but the players on the team cannot view it that way.
They cannot.
They cannot view it that way. Even if they believe it, they can't actually behave in that fashion. They got to go out there and play the games. Like, fans might feel that way, and in 10 years from now, that might be very obvious. You know what I mean? But the players that are on the roster, that are in the moment, that are getting paid millions of dollars to go out there and play, that have pride and have ego and have a sense of self-belief and all that stuff, they cannot view it that way. And I think that is part of the challenge of the coach and of Kyrie as the leader of the team, and maybe as of AD or Klay or whoever the other more vocal, experienced guys in the teams are, is getting the players to believe it and stay bought in, stay locked in, despite all the injuries, despite all the drama and the trade and all that stuff. And Klay's comments after the game last night kind of stood out to me, because he was like, I really believe that we have the chance to do something special. We just have to hold down the fort. And for Klay to say that, I don't think that he just kind of says stuff just to say it. So I do think that the players believe they have a chance to win.
Yeah, and it starts really tomorrow when it comes to their schedule, because you look at the schedule going forward for them. They play 5 of the next 6 games at home, and it starts on Thursday with the Charlotte Hornets, and then on Saturday against the Milwaukee Bucks. They've got 3 straight games at home with the Hornets, Bucks, and Sacramento Kings. Then they go on the road to face Milwaukee on March 5th, and then return home for games on March 7th and 9th against the Memphis Grizzlies and the Phoenix Suns. So if you're the Mavericks, you have a chance to do some damage against some teams that are both above and below you when it comes to the Western Conference standings over the next couple of weeks here. And in between that, obviously, is Thursday, March the 6th, when we know exactly what this team could look like from a health standpoint with this big man. So
it wouldn't surprise me if on March 6th they're like, we need more time. I don't know if we're going to get answers,
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know.
But we need to find some answers, because if we don't get the answers that the Mavericks are hopefully needing to have in order to be able to move forward here, the conversation could be looking a lot different in the final 23 games of the regular season here.
Ozzy asked, do you think the team is too cowardly to give Luka a tribute video? No, they will play a tribute video for him. I'm assuming they'll probably also do one for Maxey. I don't know if they'll do one for Markieff, because, they probably would. It would be weird if they didn't. He was here for 2 years. He was on a finals team and beloved.
But he barely played. What are they going to show? Him cheering on the bench?
So a lot of the times they'll mix in community appearances,
okay.
and, stuff like that.
That wasn't supposed to be a shot.
It wasn't. But just the way
it's a genuine question.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what made it funny, because it was a genuine what are they gonna do? Show him cheering on the bench?
It would just kind of be strange.
Right.
It could be a thing where they just say, "Hey, thank you, Mark." It could be a graphic or something.
Yeah.
But Luka and Maxey were here for so long, obviously, and you gotta. There's plenty of footage of them.
Hell, the game that Maxey had against Utah, knocking down the 8 threes in that playoff game here in Dallas. That's a highlight package in and of itself.
He hit the buzzer beater against the Lakers.
That's right. That's right. By the way, I know he didn't play great last night, but shout out to Max Christie. He made his return to Los Angeles last night. Difficult circumstances for him as well. I thought it pressed a little bit, but at the same time, I feel like the way that he has handled all of this, extremely mature for a guy that's 22 years old and moving into a different situation, hopefully able to bounce back tomorrow when they take on the Charlotte Hornets. But I wanted to make sure we give Max Christie some love, because obviously all the conversation last night was about Luka Doncic playing against his former team, but Max Christie, I thought, in some ways was able to hold it together the best way that he could, given the situation that he is dealing with as well. I appreciate all of you and the interaction in the chat so far here on the DLLS Mavs podcast as we move forward here with the Mavericks playing the Charlotte Hornets tomorrow. Coming up next here on the DLLS Mavs podcast, in light of everything that's happened to this point, how has it changed your view of the game of basketball or the way that you fan? We will discuss all that coming up next year on the DLLS Mavs podcast.
But first, shout out to Tremaine, shout out to Aaron, shout out to Chris. They all became diehards within the last 24 hours. So shout out to each of you three. A diehard is somebody that is supporting what we do here at DLLS Sports, become part of the community. And you can join that illustrious group by scanning the QR code beneath me or by clicking the link in the description below or going to alldlls.com/diehard, where for a limited time we're offering it for $48 a year, which is $4 a month in light of the Rangers starting spring training. And the Rangers are going to try and win the World Series this year, KG.
They are. They got one of the best lineups in all of baseball, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
They scored about 150 runs in their first game.
Yeah, against the White Sox. They was
all in the
crap
first
out of
inning.
The
White Sox are still in the MLB.
They haven't been contracted yet.
Yeah, but the Rangers took care of business against them.
Or relegated, whatever.
We got Jeff Wilson out there covering the team. He was actually out there. He's back now, but he's going back out there soon. So you're going to get the best Rangers coverage in the world, along with the best Mavs coverage, the best Cowboys coverage, and the best Dallas Stars coverage. And the Stars might F around and win the Stanley Cup here, too, in a few months. The Star Show was on right after ours, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But all that stuff is free on YouTube. Some of the benefits you get if you become a diehard is getting to read the premium paywalled written content covering the teams. A lot of good Star stuff coming out with the team making a push, and also their trade deadline is next week. Their trade deadline is a little later in the season than the NBA's, and the Stars have some money to play with. So they might.
We're just now about to get to the trade deadline for the
NHL? It's March 7th.
Wow, that is late.
It is late.
That's late.
It
wow.
is late. You also get to join the DLS Discord. You get a free shirt when you sign up, which pays for like 3/4 of the price. And you also get a discount on any other gear that you want. You get a discount on live events. We got a big one coming up here in a couple months. And you get your physical diehard card. That is if you choose to become a diehard. So thank you to everyone who has. You're just hanging out in the chat. Liking, subscribing to the channel, all that stuff. We really appreciate you as well.
AllDLLS.com. Become a diehard member today. Our best offer of the year right now. $48 a year, and you get all the tremendous coverage. And you can join our member-only Discord as well, where we get to hang out. We talk wrestling. We talk everything when it comes to the member-only
Someone
Discord.
was showing off their Pokemon card collection the other day, and I was getting very jealous.
Okay, real quick, before we get into our next topic.
Very jealous.
So I sent you the video of Grant Williams just, messing around, opening up packs of Pokemon. Were you upset by the fact that he was able to
I was upset that he pronounced Caterpie Caterpie. That is like, you are not a ball knower, Grant Williams. Now, he did just pull the term terrestrialization from the Gen 9 games just out of thin air during an interview that we did with him one time. So, he is a Pokemon diehard, but to not know how to pronounce Caterpie is that's just unbelievable.
It's just blasphemy for you.
Unbelievable. Heinous.
I just wanted to make sure I got your thoughts on that on record, how you felt about that particular situation. In light of everything that's happened, though, how has it changed your view of basketball or how you fan as a basketball fan? There's been a lot of conversation and discourse about how to be a fan in the wake of the trade of Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. But also, our guy Bobby Curler wrote a tremendous piece, speaking of becoming a diehard member, on alldlls.com, discussing kind of the dichotomy of what Mavericks fans are kind of feeling right now when it comes to Luka Doncic and the team and trying to wrestle with those feelings and how it may, in some ways, have changed the way that folks view the game or how they fan as a game of the basketball.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about the whole thing quickly because it was really long and a little rambly. God, I really need an editor. But
isn't that you? No, I'm just joking.
no. But I want to start from kind of the middle. There's so much fan skepticism in the NBA. Like, NBA fans openly talk about how games are rigged or the lottery is rigged. Like, you think about a few years ago, the NBA owned the New Orleans Hornets. They were then the Hornets before they became the Pelicans. The NBA owned the team, sold the team to Tom Benson's family, and then a few months later, the Pelicans went from number 4 to number 1 on lottery night. Somehow, and they were given Anthony Davis, who was considered like the best college prospect like ever. Like, stuff like that happens all the time. The New York Knicks got Patrick Ewing somehow with the frozen envelope. Like, very, very strange stuff. Officials have gone on record. Tim Donaghy went on record saying, I bet on games that I was officiating and I wasn't the only one doing it. And we're to believe that he was the only one, that it hasn't happened before or since. There's
an ongoing investigation right now.
Yeah, into Jonte Porter.
Into Jonte Porter.
And he's not the only one being investigated.
That's right.
Like, there's a lot of skepticism and doubt coming from the fans. And so whenever you're already operating from this position of our fans aren't totally sure if we're legit or if we're pro wrestling, I feel like it's the league's responsibility to give people reasons to want to follow the game. Because if you bill yourself as an entertainment product, if the game is the product, then you would do everything you could to uphold the integrity of the game. Clearly, they're not doing that. So, as revenue has increased, it's been attracting more and more wealth, more and more power, more and more people who are not basketball fans. Like Patrick Dumont is not a basketball fan. Do not believe what he says about the NBA. He does not know what he's talking about. And that's no judgment. That's no judgment toward Patrick Dumont. I know he said the thing about Shaq and Kobe and all that stuff, and that ruffled a lot of feathers, understandably. But, like, his background is in hotels and casinos and gambling and travel and entertainment and hospitality. It's not in the NBA, but it costs so much money to run a team now that it's attracting people that don't care about basketball, that are treating teams as an investment vehicle, not as a labor of love. Like Mark Cuban, for all the criticism, rightfully so, about the way that he operated the franchise, some ways very, very poorly, very, very badly, he was still a fan. He still wanted the team to win. He was a season ticket holder in the upper deck whenever the Mavs sucked, like in the 90s. Like, he was at every game cheering his ass off. So, you know, there was reason to believe that at the end of the day, he still wanted the Mavs to win.
Yes.
Right? And we can at least get behind that as fans and say, okay, I'm willing to shell out the money to go to games or to buy the jersey or to watch your team on TV or whatever it is. I'm willing to spend buku money because I trust that you have our best interest in mind. I trust that you want to win. But what happens whenever that illusion starts to fade? What happens whenever fans stop believing? What happens when the owner and the GM make moves that shatter that illusion?
Yeah.
That break the rules of the game, that violate the unspoken agreement between team and fans.
Yes. And you started to allude to it. I mean, there's an implied or an implicit contract between fans and the team, or fans in the team that they are cheering for, because if I, as a fan, are going to invest all this money, whether it be for tickets, for concessions, for merchandise, I feel like the return I should get on my investment is a group of people who are going to put all their time, energy, and resource into making the team the best that they can to win, to continue to give me the chance and feeling that I want to invest and be a fan of this team. And when that is broken, there leaves a lot of disillusionment for fans who feel like, why am I continuing to pour all of this into a team that may not necessarily care about not only winning, but also how to continue to keep me entertained as a fan? Because we talk about not just the skill or the winning portion of this when losing a player like Luka Doncic, but the entertainment and the skill factor of being able to go watch a player like that play night in and night out, and not having some of that, again, breaks some of that trust, I think, for fans when it comes to the organization. That leaves them, in a lot of ways, angry, frustrated, disappointed. And then when you see how things are being played out, whether it be through the media or things that are said about the player on the way out the door, it just further lengthens that gap between fan and team based on the way that they feel.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, these organizations and the leagues are being upheld by the fans, you know, and so I understand that general managers and owners have difficult decision to make, whether it's finances or cultural, a fit on the team, vision for the roster, and all that stuff. I understand and accept that, but you know, the Mavs play in a building that's funded by the city of Dallas, by the residents of Dallas. Like, I fund their stadium. Fans purchase season tickets. Fans purchase merchandise. Fans purchase TV packages. It's becoming increasingly difficult to watch the games, to follow the team. And, you know, these packages are getting more expensive because the networks are paying more to carry the games, but they're just passing off that cost to the consumers. So, like, the fans are losing in all of these situations. And again, you know, you can say, look, it's okay. I'm willing to pay all that money to come watch the game because I love Luka that much. And then Luka's out for load management. And, you know, your favorite player might be Luka. There's somebody in Milwaukee whose favorite player is Dame Lillard. There's someone in Portland whose favorite player was Dame Lillard. There's someone in numerous cities whose favorite player was Jimmy Butler. There's so much player movement now that the NBA, whenever you buy a jersey from their website, has a program where if the player changes teams within 90 days of purchase, you can replace the jersey for free. Like, it's become such an integral, known, transparent part of business that the NBA itself is offering jersey swaps.
Yeah.
Like, that never, this shouldn't be happening. You know, Luke mentioned Washington in the chat. You know, everything is becoming so much more transparent. The Mavs are very transparent that they don't think Luka is worthy of the contract, that they think he's lazy, and that they think he's overweight. They think he's not serious enough. The Wizards built one of the most disgusting teams of all time. And this kind of started back with the process with the Sixers, and basketball nerds were like, no, what Sam Hinkie's doing is genius. And like, I guess it worked. The Sixers are okay now. Kind of. But like, the Wizards will never be good again. The Hornets have been horrible forever. Like, these teams are fielding terrible products on purpose, and yet they're still gouging fans with the TV money, with the merchandise, with the ticket pricing and all that stuff. The Mavs are increasing ticket prices once again year over year, despite trading your favorite players. Like, it is ultimately the team's and the league's responsibility to keep these fans engaged. It is not the fans' responsibility to keep the NBA afloat. Like, it's the other way around. These teams work for the city. The city owns the arena. Like, the fans buy the tickets. They buy the jerseys. They watch the TV. The fans are the ones with the power, and it doesn't feel like the league cares, and it's because there's too much effing money to care. The average team is valued at $4.4 billion.
Yeah.
The NBA raked in $11.5 billion in revenue during the 23-24 season. And that's only going to go up once the new TV deal kicks in.
So they just signed a new massive television deal.
The players, even like kind of mid players, are making $100 and $200 million contracts, and deservedly so, because if it doesn't go to them, it's going to go to the owners, and the owners don't do anything.
And
clearly.
That's not where we wanted to go.
But like, all of them are making way too much money. There's such a disconnect. They're so out of touch with the average fan. Average fans can afford to go to one game a year, and it's a roll of the dice whether your favorite player is even going to play in the game or even be on the team by the time that game rolls around. Like, there's so many. It's so transparent. There's so many reasons to fear being a fan now.
Yeah.
And there's so many hurdles in your way of being a fan, and it just breaks my heart, man, because like, basketball is the best sport in the world. It is so much fun to follow the NBA. It is so much fun to get to talk about the NBA, to hang out in the chat with y'all. It is so much fun to watch the Mavs. I love this organization. It has been a huge, huge part of my life for the entire time that I've been alive. But my God, are they making it tough to care about what's going on?
Yeah, the callous nature in which all of this has gone about from the time of the trade was announced to all the words that have been said in between since then has really hardened fans into really into some ways, apathy, feeling aloof about the team, or just not caring at all when it comes to how this team moves forward. I mean, and you're starting to see it reflect in some ways in terms of the ticket prices in and of themselves. This comes from TickPick when it comes to just the average purchase price before and after the trade of Luka Doncic for the Lakers. Before the trade, Lakers home games were costing $253. After the trade, it now costs you $303 to get in on average. To go see Luka Doncic.
Like, we shouldn't be happy about that either.
No.
Like, cool, Genie Bus is getting richer. Like,
yeah,
that's awesome. Go team, go.
Yeah.
Like, the way that Cuban was talking about the Mavs and the way that Patrick Dumont is talking about, like, we want to be a real estate empire and all that stuff. It's like, cool, I guess. Like, you get to build a real sick casino with an arena attached. Like, that's awesome. I guess that makes me want to be a Mavs fan so bad. You know, like, it's not about any of that. Like,
that's the detachment right there.
Yeah, like,
yes.
as we get deeper into this stuff, and as you tune into TNT, and it's just Charles Barkley and Shaq taking turns dumping on your favorite players because like they're not as tough as Shaq was or whatever. Like, who cares?
Or
dude?
didn't
like,
work as hard, apparently.
It is never about the basketball. The NBA is becoming more and more about everything but the basketball. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the basketball. You're a basketball league consisting of basketball teams made up of basketball players. That's the only thing that should ever matter, and yet it's the only thing that ever doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, that's just fans just lose. We just lose.
That'll do it for us here.
I don't want to end on such a negative, but we are out of time.
See, we can laugh it off. We appreciate all of you joining us here. That was great. No, I thought that was excellently put. And there's nothing else to say more after that, honestly. Very well put. We appreciate all of you joining us here on the DLLS Mavs podcast. We will be back tomorrow with our pregame show beginning at 6:45 p.m. right here on DLLS Sports as your Mavericks host the Charlotte Hornets. They will play 5 of their next 6 games at home, starting with 3 straight home games that includes the Charlotte Hornets, Milwaukee Bucks, and the Sacramento Kings. So mark your calendar, 6:45 p.m. for our pregame show to get you ready for the Mavericks taking on the Charlotte Hornets. Thank you to our producer, Tanner, for making us look good and sound good as always. Thank you, sir. That's our Mavericks analyst, Bobby Curla. I am your host, Kevin Gray. We are DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 6:45 p.m. right here on DLLS Sports. Y'all be good. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.